Hey there. Tonight, we're going somewhere far from comfort, into the worn sandals of a samurai. Not the ones from legend, not the ones with glory, battle cries, or spotless armor. The real kind. The kind that wakes cold, eats little, bows often, and endures more than most. This isn't a story of victory. It's a story of survival. Through duty, silence, and weight you cannot set down. You wouldn't last a day, but you don't need to. You just need to listen. So turn down the lights, find a quiet place to lie down, and sink slowly into the world that once was. You wake before the sun, though calling it waking feels dishonest. You haven't truly slept, not for hours, not for nights. You simply shifted beneath stiff, thin blankets, hearing the soft wheeze of the wind outside, its breath seeping through the wooden slats in your walls. Your body never found warmth, only moments of lesser cold. The tatami beneath you offers no softness. The winter crept into your joints during the night, and now it clings to you as if it owns you. Your fingers resist motion. Your shoulders throb from yesterday's stance training. You did not dream. There is no place for dreams when your mind rehearses duties even in stillness. This isn't waking. It's resuming. And you do so quietly because no one will call your name. You are expected to rise on your own. Silence is part of your role. The quiet itself is heavy, pressed down with responsibility, like armor before it's even strapped on. The first breath you take tastes of charcoal and stale dampness. The fire burned out long ago, and no one rose early to relight it. The cold in your lungs is familiar, and you no longer cough from it. You kneel slowly, every muscle echoing its own complaint, but you make no sound. That too would be shameful. There's a rhythm to rising in a samurai's home, slow enough to show control, fast enough to show readiness. Your robes are folded beside you with care you barely remember making. The cloth is thin, the stitching worn. They smell faintly of mildew from where the walls weep during the night. You slip them on with practiced efficiency. Nothing you wear offers real warmth. It is presentation that matters. Your posture, the neatness of your layers, the arrangement of your top knot. The cold is beneath notice. You were taught not to feel it, or rather, to feel it and proceed anyway. In the small courtyard outside your door, frost has crept along the stones, white veins stretching like ghosts of water. You step into your sandals without socks. They are stiff, and the woven fiber bites your feet, but you say nothing. Your sword waits where it always does, resting upright against the wall, cloth wrapped around its handle to protect it from the air's wet teeth. You lift it slowly, not like a weapon, but like an heirloom, like a name you didn't choose but must carry perfectly. The weight of it isn't in pounds, it's in expectation, in memory. You place it into your sash as you were taught, precisely, wordlessly, and then you wait. There is no bell, no rooster. You measure the coming of duties by the color of the sky, the first traces of blue teasing the edge of the blackness. You have a few minutes, but they are not yours. You use them to bow, alone, not to a person, but to the day, to the fact that you are still here. Somewhere behind one of the paper walls, another servant shifts. A floorboard creaks, a cough scratches through the silence. The house begins to stir, but not wake, not fully. Waking suggests energy. Here there is only motion. The steam of breath in the air becomes visible as you begin to move again, this time toward the hall where you'll begin your tasks. But first, you pause at the threshold, allowing your eyes a moment to adjust to the nothingness. This life has no lanterns, no torches blazing to chase away discomfort. You will do your morning bows in the near dark, knees cold against the planks, hands numb but steady. This is your morning. This is every morning. Not heroic, not cinematic, not full of glory. Just cold, just quiet, just the ache of a body that doesn't recover as quickly as it used to. And still, you rise. The armor is waiting for you in the storage alcove, hanging where it always does, its shape bent and stiff with age. At a distance, it still looks like protection. Metal plates lacquered in dull brown, cords interlacing like muscle across a dead thing. You approach it as one would approach a ritual, because that's what it is. You do not wear it for battle. You wear it because it's expected, because your status demands a visible weight. You lift the cuirass first. It doesn't rise like cloth. It doesn't bend. It demands effort just to hold it up, let alone to fasten it to your chest. The shoulder straps pinch against your collarbone before the buckles are even tied. There is no softness in the construction, no thought for comfort. It was built to last, not to forgive. The cold of the morning has soaked into every piece. As you strap it to yourself, you shiver, not because of fear, but because the metal pulls your warmth away as if claiming it. The inner layer, meant to keep the metal from pressing into your skin, is made of coarse cloth and worn padding, but it no longer fits like it once did. Too tight at the joints, too loose at the ribs. You've changed, aged, thinned, but the armor has not. It rubs beneath your arms where the cords dig into flesh. Your shoulder blades bruise from its constant pressure. The side panels restrict your movement just enough that you notice with every breath. And still, you fasten each part, each tie, each knot. You move carefully, fingers already numb, trying not to fumble. The greaves come next, wooden and iron segments wrapping your shins with the promise of splinters. You wince once as you tighten them, then stop yourself. Pain is a private matter. It's not forbidden. It's simply irrelevant. No one asks if it hurts. No one cares. You are expected to bear the weight, and so you do. When you stand upright, fully armored, you feel taller, but only in the way a burden stretches a man. The helmet rests heavy in your hands. You don't put it on yet, not until the appearance is necessary, until your lord or his steward might glance your way, until you are expected to bow, to walk, to perform. Without the helmet, you still have a face. With it, you become the role. You glance down at your limbs, encased, restricted, oddly fragile despite the layers. The irony doesn't escape you. You wear the armor not to fight, but to be seen. It was forged to signal discipline, loyalty, presence, but not comfort. Never that. The straps across your chest dig deeper with every movement. You can't turn your head fully. You can't bend your waist. You shuffle instead of walking, stiff-legged, your joints no longer your own. Even kneeling becomes a negotiation between posture and pain. There was a time, perhaps, when putting on the armor made you feel pride, or at least belonging. That time is gone. Now you think of the armor as a kind of gravity. It pulls you down, presses your spine, makes your breath shallower without you realizing it. The body adapts, but not without cost. At night, you'll feel the bruises, shoulders, hips, thighs. Not sharp pain, just the kind that settles and lingers. The kind that reminds you how long you've been doing this. Your hands, when they rest on your knees, will ache in places you didn't know could hurt. And in that silence, in the weight of the evening, you'll wonder what the armor is really for. Not defense, not war. It is ceremony, discipline, submission. It keeps you upright in front of those who must see you as strong. It keeps you from forgetting who you're supposed to be. But it never, not even for a moment, protects you from yourself. You bow more often than you speak. Each time the motion is the same, precise, rehearsed, seemingly effortless. And yet, your body keeps score. You lower your head not because you're asked to, but because you must. You bow to your lord when he enters, to his steward when he passes, to other samurai of higher rank, to those of equal rank, and even sometimes to those beneath you, if circumstance demands humility. The bow is a language that replaces words. It doesn't ask permission. It simply occurs. Again and again. You bow even when you're alone, when you enter the shrine room, when you pass a family altar, when you place your sword down for the night. You bow to memories, to ghosts, to expectations. No one reminds you to do it. No one praises you for doing it. And still, you do. Because not bowing would be louder than a scream. It would be noticed. It would be remembered. And that is the one thing a samurai cannot allow. The motion is small, but its toll is large. Every bow begins in the lower back, where the armor pinches tight against bone. Your knees shift outward, your hands fall into place, your spine curves, not quickly, not casually, but with the slow, aching form of someone who knows there's a right way to suffer. Your neck holds tension you never release. It tightens with every descent, clenches harder with every rise. The body begins to anticipate the pain before it even begins. The muscles remember. They protest quietly. A sharp tug between your shoulders, a slow burn through your ribs, a tightness in your lower back that never really loosens, but none of it shows on your face. That too is part of the ritual, concealment, the performance of serenity. And so you endure, not once, not twice, but again and again and again. You bow until the act no longer feels like a gesture. It becomes something else, an instinct, or a submission deeper than you care to name. Sometimes the bow is shallow. Sometimes it is deep. Sometimes you hold it for the length of a breath. Sometimes longer, until your legs tremble and your ribs begin to ache. You measure time in the echo of your own stillness. And every time you rise, your spine seems slower to respond, as if it's learning reluctance. No one tells you when you've bowed enough. That's the danger. If you misjudge the moment, if you rise too soon, or not low enough, you risk offense. You risk shame. So you err on the side of endurance. You stay bowed even when your thoughts begin to wander, even when your joints go numb. Even when the world narrows into nothing but the sound of your own breath. You bow not for them, not really. You bow for the idea of them, for the structure that holds you in place, even as it wears you down. And with each repetition, something inside you folds a little further too. There's no honor in the pain itself. It's not seen. It's not spoken of. But it's there, etched into every muscle, buried in the slow stiffening of your spine at night. You feel it when you lie down, when you try to straighten, when you close your eyes and your body still remembers the angle of submission. The worst is when you dream you are bowing, only to wake and realize your body is already half-curved, already bracing. There's no escape from it. The bow follows you beyond the room, beyond the courtyard. It becomes how you enter the world, always second, always lower, always prepared to shrink. And in that act, repeated so many times you forget who taught it to you, you lose something. Perhaps pride, perhaps selfhood, or perhaps nothing at all. Perhaps it was never yours to begin with. You bow because you are samurai, because it is what you were shaped to do, even when no one's watching, especially then. The bowl in front of you is warm, but only barely. Steam rises in the faintest breath, curling upward before vanishing into the cold air. You hold the bowl with both hands, not out of reverence, but because the warmth against your skin is the closest thing to comfort you'll feel today. Inside there is rice, white, plain, and overcooked at the edges. No sauce, no seasoning, just the pale neutrality of sustenance. A few pickled vegetables float beside it, sharp in smell but dull in taste. There is no meat. There hasn't been in weeks. You stopped expecting it. Fish is rare unless someone has bribed the kitchen. Chicken is for rituals. Pork is a rumor. And beef, only in punishment. You know this bowl won't fill you. Not really. But hunger has long since become a quiet background hum. It's always there, but never loud enough to disrupt duty. Just enough to remind you that you serve first, eat second. The broth beside the rice is more water than flavor. Some root vegetables, maybe a shred of seaweed, a whisper of miso if you're lucky. You sip it slowly, as much out of ritual as necessity. It tastes like yesterday's broth and the day before's. Thin, lukewarm, functional. This is not a meal. It's compliance. Food is rationed according to position, and while you may outrank many, you do not outrank the system. There are mouths to feed above you. The Lord, his retainers, the priests, the stewards, even their animals may eat better. And so your portion remains modest, always. You do not complain. Complaints about food are vulgar. They suggest desire. They suggest longing. You were trained to view hunger not as weakness, but as discipline. Still, your stomach tightens with the memory of meat, of oil, of heat, and salt, and weight. Even a scrap of grilled fish would be a feast, but scraps go elsewhere. You remember when food had meaning. Ceremonial banquets, rewards after victory, grilled eel passed between friends. That was long ago. Before your role ossified, before your days became repetition. Now even celebrations are marked by frugality. The rare festival meals are for others, peasants cheering, merchants trading, priests offering blessings over better stocked tables. You stand at the edge, bow slightly, and eat your rice. You feel the hollowness behind your ribs more acutely in moments of contrast. When a child runs past holding sweet rice cakes, when a scent wafts from a traveler's cart, when someone laughs over a stolen bottle of sake. You don't resent them. You just note the difference. The body is honest in ways the mind is not. It craves warmth, fat, salt, flesh, things it was never meant to receive in abundance. And so it waits, and endures, and learns to function on absence. You finish the rice, scraping the last grains carefully with your fingers. Nothing is wasted. You drink the rest of the broth in 3 shallow sips. Then you sit quietly for a moment. bowl resting in your lap. You are not full. You are never full. But you are fed, and that must be enough. The kitchen will take the bowl back without a word. No thanks is given, no comment expected. Food, like everything else, is a form of structure. It is not meant to soothe. It is meant to maintain. And you, in turn, maintain the order above you. You rise slowly, your stomach feeling tighter than before. Not from fullness, but from the body's quiet protest. It wanted something more, something rich, or greasy, or alive. You silence it with posture, with stillness, with the memory that you are samurai, and samurai eat what they are given, not what they want. You do not sleep deeply. You lie still, motionless on the tatami, your body trained into quietness even in rest. But beneath that stillness, you are awake in pieces, muscles half tense, ears tuned for footsteps, the shallow rise and fall of your breath measured against imagined intrusions. Next to your head, no more than a hand's width away, rests your sword. Its presence is not comforting. It is not a guardian. It is a reminder. The lacquered scabbard presses cold against the wooden floor, the edge of its weight always touching your awareness. You do not cradle it, but you do not let it go either. It is the last thing you see before you close your eyes, and the first thing your hand reaches for when your eyes open again. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, you find yourself grasping it without realizing you moved. It's not fear of thieves, not even fear of enemies. It's the knowledge that you must be ready to kill even in your sleep. There were times long ago when you believed sleep would come easily after exhaustion, that if your body was pushed hard enough, through drills, through service, through cold and hunger, it would collapse gratefully into rest. That illusion faded with your rank. Now, responsibility hangs heavier than fatigue. You do not sleep to recover. You sleep to wait. The mind loops quietly, turning over the day's movements, the small failures, the looks you misread, the silences you couldn't interpret. Did you bow too late? Did you answer too quickly? Was your silence appropriate or suspicious? The sword beside you cannot answer these questions, but you keep it close all the same. Because in this life, clarity does not come from reflection. It comes from readiness. From being the one who rises first, who draws first, who survives the moment of doubt. You are not afraid of dying in your sleep. You are afraid of waking too late. Even the room feels temporary. The sliding doors rattle softly with each breath of wind. The beams creak under pressure you cannot see. Shadows stretch unnaturally in the corners. Sometimes you think you hear footsteps where there are none. Sometimes you hear your name, softly, as if whispered from the threshold. You do not investigate. You simply breathe slower, quieter, your hand already near the hilt. The line between dream and memory blurs. Perhaps it's the echo of a betrayal from years ago. Perhaps it's your own conscience speaking in someone else's voice. The blade has tasted blood before. Yours, once in a training accident. Others more deliberately. You remember each of them. Their weight, their sound. You remember the dreams that followed. Some of them still return, not as punishment, but as confirmation. You are still alive, and so the fear must remain. When dawn comes, it doesn't come gently. The light spills through the thin paper walls in a dull gray haze. You're already awake. You've been waiting for it, in that half-suspended state that pretends to be rest. You do not stretch. That would suggest your body had been relaxed. You sit up carefully, your hand brushing the scabbard before your feet touch the floor. The sword is still there. Of course it is. You slide it into your sash without thought, not because you expect to use it, but because not carrying it would be more dangerous than any confrontation. Without it, you are a target. With it, you are a possibility. Every day begins this way, not with peace, not with renewal, but with the resumption of duty. Sleep is a gesture, not a release. The body rests in place, but the mind remains armed. You live with the blade, you sleep beside it, and you never forget what it was made for. The courtyard is bare, save for gravel, wooden posts, and the outlines of old footprints pressed into the dirt. You stand barefoot on the cold stones, the soles of your feet already tingling from contact. The bokken, a wooden practice sword, heavier than it looks, rests across your palms, balanced but never at ease. Your instructor does not speak. He stands to the side, watching, unmoving. His silence is the command. You begin with strikes. Overhead, downward, again and again. The same arc repeated until your shoulders burn and the muscles in your arms twitch without your permission. There is no count, no praise, no correction, just motion. You swing through the air like cutting water, and still you are told it isn't clean enough, not sharp enough, not real enough. You clench the hilt tighter. The calluses on your hands are already splitting. A splinter works its way into your thumb. You don't stop. If you stop, the pain becomes the only thing in the room. The next drill is kneeling strikes. You drop to both knees onto the gravel, the rocks pressing into bone through the thin layer of your hakama. Your toes curl for balance, but the weight of your body still grinds downward. You raise the bokken, strike, reset, strike again. Each movement is deliberate, slow enough to show control, fast enough to hurt. Sweat drips down your temple, but there is no wiping it. The wind moves across your back, stealing warmth with each pass. You begin to shiver, but it doesn't change your pace. Pain is not a message. It is background noise. You've trained your body to ignore its own signals, to obey form above sensation. Blood appears where the fabric rubs too long against your knees. A thin streak, red and silent. The instructor notices, but says nothing. Pain without acknowledgement is common. Pain with acknowledgement would mean failure. So you strike again, and again. When you rise, it's not because you're finished. It's because now the paired drills begin. Another samurai steps forward, silent and expressionless. You bow to one another, a motion that cracks the crust of sweat at your neck. Then you begin the sparring form. His attack, your block. Your attack, his parry. The bokken slams against wood, against wrists, against forearms. There's no padding, no retreat. Each blow vibrates up your arm, rattling the bone. The impact lands differently depending on the angle. Sometimes it numbs, sometimes it stings, sometimes it feels like a knife through muscle. When your footwork slips, your shin scrapes the ground. When your balance falters, your shoulder takes the hit. Your breath shortens, your vision narrows, but you press forward. Not to win, to endure. That's all that's required of you. The other man's strike lands hard against your ribs. You grunt quietly, not in protest, just to exhale the pain. When the session ends, there is no ceremony, no bow to the instructor, no dismissal. He simply turns his back and walks away, and you're left to recover in silence. You wipe your hands on the inside of your sleeve, staining it with blood and sweat. The Balkan is chipped now. Your hands sting as you grip it, raw where the skin has opened. You feel the sting of gravel still embedded in your knees. You'll pick it out later, maybe, or let it work itself out. You limp back to your room, each step a reminder that discipline leaves marks. Training is not meant to make you better. It is meant to break the parts of you that resist obedience. You don't train for combat. You train for silence, for stillness under pressure, for readiness without question. Your skin breaks, yes, but more importantly, your will does not. That, you are told, is the mark of a true samurai. Not grace, not skill, but quiet, unquestioning pain. It is not death that wakes you at night. It is the memory of a pause too long, a bow too shallow, a word said in the wrong tone, or to the wrong person, or in the wrong moment. The body can survive wounds. It can survive hunger and cold, and even the blade itself. But shame? Shame seeps deeper. It spreads like ink on paper, blotting out everything you once were. You do not fear dying in a duel. You fear the silence that follows an error, the subtle narrowing of your Lord's eyes, the pause before he speaks, the way others avert their gaze, not out of mercy, but out of certainty that you no longer belong. There is no louder condemnation than that quiet. No punishment sharper than being seen as less than you were. Not dishonorable, just insufficient. A flaw, a crack, a weakness exposed. And once it's there, no act can undo it. So you measure everything, every gesture, every breath. You speak less, and when you do, your words are rehearsed, weighed in silence before they ever reach your lips. You don't allow opinion to show. You don't let your thoughts form in public space. Even a furrow of your brow could be mistaken. Even kindness, if misread, becomes a stain. You rehearse bows in your head before entering a room. You repeat names silently to be sure you don't forget them. You count steps to avoid misplacement. Every action is a form of defense, not against blades, but against disgrace. A single misstep, stepping into a room before being called, forgetting a formal phrase, showing impatience, could mean reprimand. Or worse, no words at all, just a look, a long pause. A nod that means your name is now lesser. And when your name is lesser, you are no longer whole. You are tolerated. And every glance reminds you of that. There are samurai who have died with honor, and there are samurai who have lived in shame. The second fate is the crueler one. You've seen them. Men who once stood tall, now careful to speak, careful to move, their presence thinner than before. They are not banished. They are erased by degrees. Their sword is still sharp, their armor still worn, but their voice has no weight. They perform their duties, but they are not truly seen. You fear that more than you fear the blade. You would rather spill your own blood than see your reflection through the eyes of disappointment. You would rather end it cleanly than let the stain spread. It's not dramatics, it's arithmetic. A life of diminished standing is not life at all. You carry your worth in the eyes of others, and if they stop seeing you with respect, then you are already halfway gone. And so you live in caution, in exactness, in unrelenting self-measure. You test your posture in the mirror each morning. You repeat phrases in your head as you walk. You review your failures at night, hoping they went unnoticed. But you know better. Nothing goes unnoticed. A servant hears a hesitation. A steward observes a falter. Word passes quietly, without sound, without letters. And you carry it with you, even if no one speaks of it. You fear disgrace the way a man fears drowning, not for the pain, but for the slow suffocation. You fear being seen not as a warrior, but as a man who forgot himself, a man who made others uncomfortable, a man who let his mask slip. And so you wear the mask tighter, not with pride, not with strength, but with desperation. Because here, in this place, it is not the sword that kills you, it is the shame, and no armor protects you from that. You do not speak first, not to your Lord, not to your peers, not even to those beneath you, unless protocol allows. The weight of silence is heavier than your armor, and far more permanent. It wraps itself around your mouth like another layer of discipline, not to protect you, but to contain you. You've learned that words are risks, not gifts. Every syllable carries the chance of misstep. Every greeting could be misread. So you wait. Always. For a glance, a nod, a word from someone else. Only then do you speak, and only with care, as though each phrase might be your last. Even when you know the answer. Even when the room is waiting. Even when your lungs ache from holding breath. You let the silence stretch until it is no longer yours to break. That is the rule. That is the safety. That is the prison. There are moments when the silence becomes unbearable. When something inside you strains to be heard, to ask a question, to offer a correction, to express pain or fatigue or confusion, but you don't, because you've seen what happens to those who forget their place. A raised voice invites suspicion. A casual comment invites scorn. And once you are seen as someone who speaks without invitation, you are marked. Not publicly, but internally. Whispers travel faster than voices, and so you practice stillness, not only of body, but of voice. You nod when addressed, speak when asked, listen without showing your thoughts. Even in moments of joy or sorrow, you keep your mouth closed. Emotions, like words, are meant to be hidden. They do not belong to you alone. They belong to the hierarchy, the system, the unspoken order of everything. Sometimes, the silence becomes a test. A superior stands before you, watching, waiting, saying nothing. You feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on you, waiting to see if you will break the order, if you will speak first. You never do. You lower your head slightly, maintaining the right level of humility. You keep your breathing steady. You accept the discomfort. It is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is nothing. Sometimes it is just a moment passing between two people, full of all the things that cannot be said. But it lingers. Later, you will replay it in your mind, searching for meaning in the silence. Was he disappointed? Was it a warning? Was it nothing at all? You'll never know. That is part of the silence, too. It is not merely the absence of words, it is the absence of certainty, and it shapes you more deeply than any conversation ever could. Even alone, the silence follows you. You rehearse phrases in your head before speaking, even when no one is there. You catch yourself mouthing apologies that were never needed, explanations that will never be asked for. You whisper replies to questions no one posed, just to feel your own voice again. And yet, when the time comes to speak aloud, your voice feels foreign, distant, too loud. You clear your throat quietly, trying to remember how to shape words without overstepping. There's a rhythm to speaking, one that has been drilled into you so thoroughly that even rebellion feels like obedience. You never speak first, not because you are weak, not because you are shy, but because you were trained to measure worth by restraint. And so your voice lives behind your teeth, waiting, always waiting, for permission to exist. They kneel in the dirt before you, shoulders trembling, heads lowered, hands pressed into the cold ground. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they offer excuses or denials or apologies, their words crumbling out between sobs and silence. You don't listen. You don't need to. The order has already been given, and that's the only thing that matters. The steward approached you earlier, voice level and indifferent, pointing to 2 names on a wooden tally board. He said they failed to deliver the full tax, that they concealed rice, that their field lay fallow too long. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. You didn't ask. You don't ask. You bowed, accepted the staff, and walked toward the punishment yard without thought. The rod in your hand is smooth and worn from years of such errands. It fits too easily into your palm, as if made for this task alone. You hold it like your sword, firmly, without affection. You raise the rod and bring it down on the back of the first man. He flinches, but he doesn't cry out. He knows better. Crying makes it last longer. He simply gasps through his teeth and steadies himself again. You strike once more, then again. There's no rhythm to it, no art. It's not like training, where motion has grace. Here, the movement is blunt, repetitive, devoid of thought. You feel the jolt through your arm with each blow, feel your own shoulder tighten, your grip begin to sweat. The man's robe tears, skin reddens, then splits. The second man watches, his breath sharp and shallow. You don't look at him. You don't speak. You're not here to judge or comfort. You're here to carry out the act, to fulfill the moment, to move the pain from one place to another. The punishment is not yours. You are simply its tool. When it's the second man's turn, he starts to plead. You can barely make out the words, something about children, about illness, about rain that never came. You do not respond. You are not meant to. A samurai does not debate with peasants. A samurai does not justify violence. The justification already exists. It was spoken aloud by someone above you. That makes it real. That makes it necessary. You swing the rod across the man's shoulders, watch as he folds forward, with a sound like wind pushed through teeth. His ribs rise and fall rapidly. You strike again, not because you want to, not because you don't. Desire is not part of this. You don't feel hate. You don't feel mercy. You feel your heartbeat, steady and slow, and the sting in your elbow as the rod vibrates back through your bones. And when it's over, you bow to the steward, who watched it all without blinking. Then you walk away. Later, you wash your hands at the basin. There's no blood on them, but they feel stained. The skin smells faintly of wood and sweat and something sour. You scrub harder than necessary. You do not think of the men. You think of the rod, of how it bent slightly with each blow, of how your grip adjusted automatically, of how natural it felt, and how little resistance rose in you. This is what lingers, not guilt, but familiarity. You wonder briefly if you've done this too many times, or not enough to feel anything. But the thought passes. There are other tasks, other silences, other rituals of control. You dry your hands and sit quietly, waiting for the next order. The rod leans in the corner, waiting to be used again. You don't question it. You don't ask why. That too is a kind of obedience, and obedience in your world is the only thing more permanent than pain. You sit by the dim glow of a dying oil lamp, its flame flickering against the breeze that seeps through the cracks in the wall. The night is silent, save for the soft creak of the house adjusting to the cold. A square of rough paper rests on your lap, weighed down at the corners with stones to keep it from curling. The brush in your hand is thin, and the ink is nearly dry, leaving streaks and hesitation in each stroke. You don't write for praise. There is no one to show it to. You don't even sign your name. Instead, you write because the silence is too dense otherwise, because something within you still wants to be seen, even if it's only by the night. You shape a line about fog, how it clings to the trees like regret. Then one about cherry blossoms, crushed underfoot in a muddy path. Then another, about death, of course. There is always death. You write in the old form. Haiku, 3 lines, 17 syllables, contained like you. Nothing too long, nothing indulgent. Just enough to name what you are not allowed to speak aloud. You don't use the grand brushstrokes of court poets. You have no audience, no patron. Only this lamp, this moment, this breath that trembles with the cold. The ink runs thin on the rough paper. You dip again. The black liquid is gritty, gritty like the sand from the training yard, gritty like the burnt rice you ate earlier. You write slowly, careful not to press too hard. Too much pressure tears the page. Too little and the words vanish. You wonder if the paper will even survive the night. The air is damp, and by morning the corners will be soft, curling in on themselves like fallen petals. But you write anyway, because the words matter, even if they disappear. Sometimes the poems come easily. A memory surfaces, of a bird flying crookedly across a winter sky, or the way your mother used to stir tea without drinking it, and the lines shape themselves. Other times, nothing comes. You stare at the blankness, feeling the weight of all the things you cannot say. You never write about duty, or obedience, or the beatings you've given and received. Not directly, but they bleed into the poems anyway, in the metaphors, in the pauses, in the way a line ends too suddenly, as if interrupted by a blade. You write about silence, about stone lanterns forgotten in the weeds, about dreams where you have no face. No one will read them. They're not meant to be read. You fold them when you're done, place them under your mat, or sometimes burn them in the brazier. Letting the smoke carry them away feels right. like giving the unsaid a place to vanish into. Occasionally, a fellow samurai will mention poetry, in passing, in jest. You nod, say nothing. You never admit you write. That would be vanity or weakness or something worse. You imagine someone finding one of your pages, lifting it with careful fingers, frowning at the slant of your lines. Judging the ink, not the meaning. Or worse, reading it aloud and laughing. So you keep the words to yourself, hidden like a bruise, soft like breath on cold steel. The poems are not for them. They are for you, for the part of you that still notices the color of leaves in autumn, for the part that remembers the name of a dead friend without flinching, for the part that hopes, quietly and without reason, that something gentle might still survive within you. You write because in a world where every action is ordered, every gesture judged, this is the one thing that belongs only to you. And even if the ink fades, the silence behind it remains. That, perhaps, is enough. You kneel across from him, the mat between you bare except for the short blade resting on a folded white cloth. The room is silent. No wind, no birds, no footsteps. Only the still air of ceremony, dense and waiting. He is dressed in his formal robes, freshly pressed, with a poem tucked into the sleeve. A final gesture of thought, of control, of grace. His face is calm, though pale. Not from fear, but from the weight of inevitability. You've seen this before. Too many times. It never changes. The silence, the breath, the careful preparation of each motion. This is not a battlefield. There is no enemy here. No chaos, no screaming, no clashing of steel. There is only order. A ritual older than you, older than your Lord, older than the language itself. You were chosen to assist, his second. Not because of closeness, not because of affection, but because you are precise and silent and quick. You do not speak to him. There are no farewells exchanged. That would suggest a bond. This is not about friendship. It is about form. The way the blade is held, the way the cloth is folded to catch what will spill, the way the eyes stay open. He reaches out slowly, his hands steady, and lifts the blade with both palms. It catches the light for a moment, before dipping downward into shadow. He bows, just once, to the emptiness in front of him. Then to you. You return the gesture. You know what comes next, and you steel yourself not against the act, but against the moment before it, the second of suspension, where everything in the world balances on breath alone. Then he draws the blade in, turning it inward. You do not look away. That would be cowardice. You watch, even as the steel touches his stomach, even as he begins the motion, slow, deliberate, controlled. His body tenses, the blade cuts, shallow at first, then deeper. A small sound escapes him, a grunt, nothing more. He does not cry out. His back stiffens, his arms tremble. His mouth stays closed. He is doing it right. He is honoring the ritual. You rise on your knees. The sword in your hand is already unsheathed, its edge keen, perfectly cleaned, glinting under the dim light. You do not rush. You wait for the moment when his head lowers, just enough, just slightly, so that your stroke will be clean. It comes, a subtle collapse in his shoulders, a tilt in the neck. Your blade moves once, swift and final, no hesitation. The room does not echo with the sound. It absorbs it. The head does not roll. It leans forward, resting against the robes, as if in sleep. You bow again. You sheath the sword. You fold the bloodied cloth carefully, as instructed. There is no panic, only form. Later, someone will clean the body. Others will burn the mat. The blade will be purified. The poem will be read aloud by someone who never met him. You will not be praised. You will not be thanked. This was not heroism. It was a responsibility. One that falls again and again on those who can do it without flinching. You return to your quarters in silence. Your sleeves smell of blood, though none touched you. You wash your hands even though they are clean. You sit, alone, and stare at your own short blade resting in the corner. The same kind he used. The same kind you may one day hold for yourself. You wonder briefly how your hands will feel when they draw it in, if they will tremble, if someone will kneel across from you, if they will be quick. You hope so. You do not fear the ritual. You fear the pause before it, the breath, the silence, the decision to lean forward. That's where the pain lives. Everything after is just a final act in a script you already know by heart. Their names were never spoken again. Not by the court, not by the stewards, not by the others who stood nearby. Once the act was done, once the blood dried, their identities dissolved like smoke, unwritten, unmarked, folded into the silence that clings to all things after death. But you remember. Not names, perhaps, not ranks, but the way their shoulders moved, the way their hands trembled, the way their eyes flicked upward at the last moment, looking not at you, but past you, as if trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. You carry that. You carry the quiver in their limbs, the warmth of their final breath, the weight of their falling. No ceremony can wash that out of your skin. No ritual can cut it free. It stays with you, quieter than guilt, heavier than grief. You were trained to move past it, but you never did. Not really. It returns in moments of stillness, in the pause before sleep, in the space between footfalls on the temple path. You see them again, not whole but in fragments, a jaw clenched too tightly, a lip bitten raw, a final bow so shallow you almost missed it. These are not memories you seek. They arrive uninvited, like dust on lacquered wood, soft, persistent. You tell yourself they were necessary, that each was justified, that you were not the hand, but the extension of an order. But even now, years later, you can still feel the weight of the blade in your palm, the way it resisted flesh, then slid through. The way the silence that followed wasn't clean, but thick, uneasy. You told no one. No one asked. That's part of the discipline. The pain is not in the wound. It is in the remembering. And you remember everything. There were those who died with dignity, back straight, lips still. And there were those who could not hold still, who cried, begged, wept. Their fear entered the room first, lingered long after their bodies were carried away. You weren't supposed to notice, but you did. You always did. You never spoke of it. But the body speaks even in silence. Your hand shook afterward, just a little, enough that you had to grip your sleeve to hide it. That tremble never left. It simply learned to wait. You feel it when you lift your cup, when you bow too low, when you wake before the bell. A soft reminder. You were there. You did this, and though the records will never show your name beside theirs, the silence between the pages is yours, the hush in the corridor, the unfinished breath during prayers. All of it follows you like shadow. Others speak of duty, of honor, of balance. They say death, in service, is clean, controlled, necessary. Perhaps, but the mind does not obey the same laws as the blade. It keeps what it chooses. It replays what should have vanished. And so you carry not just the silence of the dead, but the echo of your own hands. You have learned to walk without sound, to sleep without dreams, to breathe without weight. And still, they return. Not with accusation, not with hatred, just with presence, as if reminding you that they were here once, that they were more than the act that ended them. You carry that, not out of penance, but because you have no choice. The silence is not your punishment. It is your inheritance. And every day that you wake, still breathing, still holding a blade you haven't used, that silence grows heavier, not loud, not violent, just steady and trembling, just like you. Your lips move upward, but nothing inside you follows. The smile you offer your Lord is precise, measured in length, in angle, in timing. It comes at the end of a phrase, or in response to a glance, or after receiving a compliment that is neither sincere nor expected. The smile isn't joy. It isn't even politeness. It is function, a signal, a movement of muscle that communicates deference, loyalty, predictability. You practice it without thinking, the way you bow or fold a letter or clean a blade. Your face becomes a mask, but not a disguise. It is a reflection of his comfort, not your emotion. You smile when he jokes, when he praises, when he observes something you cannot see. And in doing so, you remain safe, useful, familiar. The others do the same. An entire hall of men smiling on cue, as if the warmth of the room depends on it. But behind your teeth, there is only silence. There are moments when your face aches from holding it too long. The corners of your mouth twitch involuntarily after the fourth repetition. The muscles tighten across your cheeks, not from laughter, but from strain. You excuse yourself when you can, claim fatigue, offer a bow, withdraw to the corridor where the cold air allows your expression to fall back into stillness. No one comments on it. No one has to. They understand. The smile isn't meant to last. It's a tool like any other. You wield it as required, polish it when dull, hide it when not in use. In the mirror, you sometimes see it flash unbidden when you think of nothing at all. A reflex, like blinking, like breathing. It unsettles you, not because it's false, but because it's so thoroughly disconnected from feeling. It exists without you now. And you wonder quietly if that is what your Lord truly wants, to be surrounded by faces that perform contentment rather than experience it. You used to smile for other reasons. You remember faintly what it felt like to do so without effort. With friends, with family, after rain, during festivals, moments when your mouth moved because your chest lifted. But those moments belong to another life, one before your posture mattered more than your presence, before your words were filtered, weighed, rehearsed, before you understood that sincerity could be mistaken for rebellion. You stopped offering real smiles when you saw how they were received, with confusion, with suspicion, sometimes with dismissal. Real joy had no place in the polished halls of duty. It was too raw, too unpredictable. So you closed it off, buried it, let the surface remain while the root withered beneath. Now, when you smile, you do so without access to what it once meant. It's a gesture of allegiance, of submission, of survival. You don't resent your Lord. He is what the world demands of him, and you are what the world demands of you. The smile you offer him is clean, respectful, practiced. You do it well, so well that he likely believes it. Perhaps he even needs it, to believe that those around him serve not only with blades, but with affection. And maybe in a strange way, that is mercy, to give him the illusion of warmth, so he never has to look too closely at the cold. Still, when the doors close and you're alone, your face settles like water after a stone is removed. You feel the tension ease, not relief, just absence. You sit in the dark and stretch your jaw, feeling the ache where your loyalty lives. It doesn't hurt much, just enough to remind you, even your expressions are not your own. You smile when required. You stop when dismissed. Like a servant tending the hearth, you offer a flame that is not yours, and when it's no longer needed, you let it die. The walls around you are made of paper and wood, thin enough for sound to pass through, thick enough to remind you where you end. But they do not belong to you. None of it does. Not the beams, not the floor, not the woven mats under your knees. You live here, but not as one who inhabits. You occupy. You pass through. You follow routines written by others along spaces designed for other purposes. The room where you sleep is assigned, not chosen. Its shape shifts depending on who else arrives, who outranks whom, who needs more silence than you. The doors do not lock. Privacy is a concept for poets and the dead. You share your space with footsteps, with breath, with the faint creak of wood as someone rolls over in the dark. Even the pillow beneath your head has been used by others, its stuffing worn into a hollow by bodies that once rested the same way you do now. In the morning, you fold your bedding with care, tucking the corners just so, smoothing the creases with a hand that still aches from yesterday's training. The futon is returned to its proper shelf, the pillow to its place. Nothing remains to say that you were ever there. By midday, someone else may lie down in that same spot, and you will pass them by without a glance. You do not mark your presence with scent or color or decoration. You do not hang talismans or charms. You do not carve your name into the wooden beams. What would be the point? This place is not yours to change. The room belongs to the system, to function, to rotation. You are expected to move through it like air, useful, invisible, replaceable. You might be given a corner to store your clothes, a hook for your sword, a bowl in the kitchen marked with your family crest. But ownership is never spoken, not even whispered. At times, you catch yourself imagining another kind of room, one with thick walls, a closed door, something soft that no one else has touched, a space where sound doesn't seep through, where your breath stays yours. You imagine a place where you could leave something behind and expect it to remain. A brush, a letter, a pair of sandals. But such thoughts feel indulgent, even dangerous. So you let them go. You remind yourself that a samurai's duty is not to possession, but to presence, to mobility, to impermanence. You live not in a house, but in service. And service is its own kind of architecture, built from rules, maintained by silence, insulated with ritual. If your lord moves, so do you. If he dies, so does your place here. The walls do not remember you. They do not grieve when you leave. They were never meant to. Still, sometimes in the middle of the night, when the others have fallen into shallow sleep, you sit upright and let your fingers touch the floor. The wood is smooth, cold, slightly warped with age. You trace the grain as if searching for some imprint of yourself. But there is nothing. No warmth, no echo. Just the stillness of a space that will never become yours. You could live here for 20 years, and it would not remember you. You could die here, and no one would know which mat you favored, which direction you preferred to sleep. You are a ghost in your own quarters, visible only through action, never through belonging. You rise again, adjust the folds of your robe, and return to lying down. You close your eyes, but do not sleep. The room holds you, but it does not welcome you. And you, in turn, never truly enter. You exist beside the walls, but never within them. He kneels in front of you, head bowed, shoulders shaking in the same rhythm you remember from years ago, when he was too small to hold a practice sword, when he still called for you in the dark. Now he is nearly grown, his top knot freshly tied, his posture nearly perfect. Nearly, but not enough. The mistake he made today was small, a missed step in formation, a hesitation before answering a question. No one else noticed. But you did. And that is enough. The duty is yours. Not because you are his father, but because you are samurai. Because weakness seen and uncorrected becomes failure. You raise your hand slowly, the rod balanced between your fingers. It is the same one your instructor once used on you, the same smooth handle, the same silent weight. You do not want to strike him, but that is irrelevant. You will, because he must learn, and you must teach. That is the shape of the world you both inherited. The sound is soft, almost muted against the fabric of his robe. He flinches, but he doesn't cry out. You taught him that. He bites the inside of his cheek, and his eyes stay fixed on the floor. You strike again, not hard, not to injure, but with enough weight to remind him that perfection isn't a request, it's a requirement. Your hand stings, angs from the impact, and a pulse rises behind your eyes, not from anger, but from something heavier. You remember when he first walked, when his balance was clumsy, and you let him fall. You told yourself it was for his strength, that even then he needed to know the world would not catch him. But you also remember the way he reached for you, the way he trusted you would lift him anyway. That trust is still in his face now, buried under discipline. But it's there, and you strike again. Afterward, he bows, deeply. He thanks you for the correction. You nod, unable to speak. Your voice would betray you. You watch as he leaves the room, his steps steady, his expression already blank. He will not mention this again. Not to you, not to anyone. He will train harder. He will carry the bruise in silence. That is what you have taught him. That is what was taught to you. But when the door closes and you are alone, your hand still holding the rod, you sit in the quiet and feel the emptiness that follows discipline. Not pride, not guilt, just emptiness. You could have spoken to him. You could have explained. You could have told him that you saw the effort in his eyes, that you believed in him. But that is not what fathers say. Not here, not now. That is not the lesson. You place the rod down and stare at your hands, the same hands that once carried him, that now correct him. You think about what it means to shape a boy into a samurai, not into a man, into a weapon, into a silence, into a reflection of something unbending. You fear he will grow into your shadow, and that there will be no room for him to be anything else. You do not regret the strike. Regret is a luxury, but you carry the weight of it, the ache that comes not from the motion, but from the absence of what could have been. A word, a gesture, an embrace. He is your son. But in this life, he is also your student, your subordinate, your mirror. And you were never taught how to love something you are required to control. So you do what was done to you. You pass the lesson forward. And when night comes, and you hear him breathing in the next room, you do not rise. You do not go to him. You simply listen and remind yourself, this too is part of the role. It's not always your blood. In fact, it usually isn't. More often, it's from a blade passed to you after a duel or a punishment or a ritual. The steel is still warm from the body it entered, and your hand doesn't hesitate. You take the cloth, or sometimes nothing at all, and begin to wipe. Down the flat of the blade first, then carefully along the edge, never against it. You've done this enough times to avoid cutting yourself. The scent is familiar. Iron, sweat, something darker underneath. You don't flinch. You don't comment. The sword is cleaned before the body is moved. That's the order. That's the way of things. You're expected to maintain calm. The stain must vanish before anyone of rank walks past. No one wants to see the consequence. Only the symbol. Only the quiet gleam of discipline restored. So you kneel and begin again, blood still wet between your fingers, and your face unreadable. Sometimes the blood is on your own face, a cut from training, a stray blow, a mistake. You don't ask for help. You find the corner of your sleeve and blot it out slowly. If there's no cloth, your hand will do. A thumb beneath the eye, the back of your wrist along your lip. No mirror is needed. You've memorized where it will be, along the cheekbone, under the chin, dripping from the nose. You know the warmth before you feel the sting. You clean yourself without urgency, because urgency would reveal weakness. There's no shame in blood, only in letting others see that it bothers you. The sting fades faster when ignored, and so you ignore it. Even when it dries stiff against your skin, even when it clings to your lashes, even when you taste it on your tongue long after the moment has passed. You wipe, you rinse, you continue. And then there are the times when the blood is neither yours nor theirs, but something left behind. On the floor, in the corner of a room, on the wooden steps outside the hall. You find it without warning, without context. A smear, a droplet. A pool sometimes, too dark to be fresh. No one speaks of it. No one explains. You fetch a cloth or a handful of sand, or simply kneel and begin scrubbing. The task is given without words. The silence is its own command. You press your palm to the stain, feel the tackiness pull at your skin, and you scrub until the wood looks clean again. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it sinks in too deep, and all you can do is smear it thinner, spread it into something less visible. When you stand, your hands are stained. You wash them. The basin water clouds pink, then clear. No one asks where the blood came from. No one wants to know. There is a kind of ritual to it. Cleaning, not as repentance, but as necessity. It becomes muscle memory. You begin to see it as part of the day, like training, like bowing, like eating plain rice. The smell no longer turns your stomach. The color no longer startles you. You begin to see blood not as life, but as residue, something that must be removed before the next act can begin. You never speak about it, not to the others, not to yourself. You simply do it, because it needs to be done, because no one else will, because a samurai keeps the world clean in ways no one acknowledges. And when you lie down at night, the scent sometimes still lingers in your nose. You breathe it in, not with pride, not with shame, just recognition. You clean blood with your bare hands, and in doing so, you leave no trace of what happened, except perhaps in the lines of your own skin. You see them sometimes, sweeping the temple steps at dawn, robes dusted with ash, heads bowed in the quiet rhythm of their own breath. They move slowly, but not with hesitation. Their pace is chosen, not enforced. Their silence is not the kind you know. It does not come from fear or from obedience or from the constant weighing of words. Their silence is theirs, carved from stillness, owned. And you envy that more than you would ever admit. You too are silent, but your silence is armor. It suffocates where theirs soothes. You bow to lords, they bow to the wind. You kneel in corridors and punishment halls. They kneel in gardens, beside streams, before shrines no one visits. You walk with purpose you didn't choose. They walk without purpose at all. And somehow, it gives them peace. You don't know what that peace feels like, only that it exists, just out of reach. Their food is plain, boiled roots, pickled greens, cold tea. You've seen their bowls, cracked at the edges, never full. You've seen their sandals fall apart at the seams, and yet, they do not look hungry. Not the way you do. Their eyes are calm, not searching. Their backs are straight, but not rigid. No rank tightens their shoulders. No duty bends their knees. They bow, yes, but not as submission. As awareness, as ritual without fear. You wonder sometimes if they feel the same pain in their legs when they sit, or if stillness has become their language. You wonder if they dream differently, if their nights are quiet, if they do not wake rehearsing their own posture, their own replies, their own worth. They have nothing, and yet they seem unburdened. You have everything that should matter: status, training, sword, and yet you feel the weight of it every hour. You once spoke to one years ago, only briefly. He was patching the roof of a storage shed while you waited nearby. You asked him how long he had been there. He smiled, shrugged, and said, "Long enough to forget what year it is." You didn't understand it then. you do now. Time moves differently for them. Not faster, not slower, just softer. Without marks, without punishments, without the constant need to prove that they deserve to keep breathing. When the seasons change, they do not prepare for battle. They do not worry about how others see them. They shave their heads, sweep leaves, chant under their breath. They are ignored by lords, but not by the world. The rain still falls for them. The sun still warms them. And when they cry, if they ever do, it is not a weakness. It is water joining water, sound joining sound. You would never become one. That is not your path. Your oaths are too deep, your blade too close. But the thought lingers, not as fantasy, but as ache. What would it mean to live without needing to be strong? To sit without needing to be alert? To speak only when the words come from stillness, not strategy? You think about it sometimes, in the narrow space between tours, when no one is looking. Not for long. Just enough to feel the edge of what is missing. And then you rise, straighten your robe, tighten your grip. The envy does not make you bitter. It makes you quiet. The monks sweep the dust from the temple stones. You sweep the dust from your mind, your name, your voice. They chose their silence. You were handed yours, but in the hush between footsteps, between breaths, between one duty and the next, you carry that image with you. A man without rank, without weapon, without shame, just breathing, just being, and that is enough to hurt. It starts as a thread in the distance, soft, uncertain, floating above the rooftops like mist. The sound of a bamboo flute, carried on morning air. You stop without meaning to, body pausing mid-step, breath catching in your throat. It's not the melody that halts you, it's what it means. The flute is never played for joy. Not here, not anymore. You've never heard it at a wedding, never during a harvest. Only at the edge of death. It does not announce it. It follows it, like smoke after flame. A breath of music marking the space someone has just left behind. The melody is simple, slow, full of empty places. And in those pauses, you feel the weight of absence, of endings. The notes rise gently, then fall apart, dissolving into the silence around them. No one weeps while the flute plays. No one speaks. The music fills that space where grief would be, but cannot live. You've come to associate beauty with loss, not just because of the flute, but because it's the only time beauty is allowed to slow things down. In battle, beauty has no place. In duty, it is dangerous. In training, it is a distraction. But in mourning, it is expected. The white robes, the slow procession, the careful folding of cloth around a lifeless body, the incense rising in soft spirals, and above it all, that sound. Hollow, breathy, like someone speaking from the far side of a dream. You have heard it for comrades, for strangers, for boys you trained with who vanished too soon. The tune does not change. Only the faces do. You try not to memorize the melody, but you have. It lives behind your ears, waiting for moments when silence feels too thin. And when it comes unannounced, it pulls you into a stillness that no training can protect you from. Once, when you were young, you asked who played it. No one gave a name. Some said it was a monk. Others claimed it was a servant trained only for that task. You've never seen them. The flutist stays out of sight. as if the music comes not from a person, but from the air itself. That feels truer. The flute is not performance. It is echo, an answer to something that cannot be spoken aloud. And when it stops, suddenly, always suddenly, the world feels too loud. The crunch of sandals on gravel, the creak of wooden doors, the low voice of a steward delivering final instructions. Without the music, death becomes bare again. Just a body, just motion. But with it, for a moment, everything feels softer. You almost forget the weight of formality. Almost. Then the last note fades, and your spine straightens once more. There is always another ritual waiting. You never listen to music outside of funerals. There are no songs in the barracks, no humming in the garden, no one sings at night. The silence is too complete, too expected. And perhaps that's why the flute lingers so deeply, because it breaks that silence and does so without punishment. It's the one sound no one ever orders to stop, the one softness allowed to enter this world of hardness. And yet, it comes only when someone has left, only when it's too late to hear it. You wonder what it would feel like to hear the flute and not think of loss. To sit beside someone and simply let the notes pass through the air like sunlight. But that belongs to another life, not yours. For you, beauty arrives only after something has broken, and the flute plays only when the breath is already gone. So you listen, quietly, as the melody carries someone else away, and you wait for silence to return, because it always does. She never raises her voice. She doesn't need to. Her silence is sharper than reprimand, more precise than any blade. You come home after a long day, mud on your sandals, cold in your sleeves, blood still drying somewhere you can't name, and she's already kneeling by the brazier, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes lift for only a moment, then return to the coals. That one glance is enough. She knows where you were, what you did, what you didn't say. She doesn't ask questions because she already has answers. She doesn't accuse you because she doesn't need to. You fear your Lord for his power. You fear her because she sees you fully, without effort, without armor, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. There are no rituals to shield you here, no formality to hide behind. She watches you as a man, not a role. And that, somehow, is worse. She knows when you lie, not because your voice changes or your words slip, but because you pause too long before saying them, because your hand lingers on the doorframe, because your eyes flicker to the side before you sit. These are the small betrayals that escape your control. She notices them all, and she says nothing. That's what frightens you most. The way she lets you carry your lies in peace but never lets you forget they exist. When she sets your bowl down, the placement is precise, slightly farther away than usual. When she speaks, her tone is flat, each word balanced carefully between care and distance. You wonder if she's punishing you, but that's too simple. She's reminding you of who you were when you met, of what you swore, of what you've become. And every reminder cuts deeper than orders or fists, because she still expects something from you, still believes you might return to yourself. And you're not sure you can. There are nights when she does not sleep beside you. She folds her bedding farther from yours, beneath the window, as if needing the cold to keep her calm. You lie awake, not daring to move, not because you've fought, not because she's angry, but because the space between you feels final, like something you can't cross without breaking. You want to reach for her, to apologize maybe. For what? You wouldn't know how to say. For the distance, for the wait, for the silence that follows you home. But your hand stays still. You remember the days when she laughed, when she spoke first, when she touched your shoulder without hesitation. That woman is still there. You see glimpses of her in the way she untangles your sleeves when they hang wrong, or how she refills your tea without looking. But those moments are fleeting. Now, more often, she moves like a stranger who remembers you and expects nothing. Still, she remains. She prepares your meals. She mends your robes. She nods when others speak of your honor. But you know what lives beneath that quiet. You know that she sees the cracks you've spent years covering, and you fear that more than shame, more than punishment, because it means you are not fooling anyone, not where it matters. You fear your Lord for what he can take from you. You fear her because she holds what you gave freely and might one day let it go. You know she won't leave. That isn't the kind of woman she is, but she could stop seeing you, stop hoping for you, stop waiting for a version of you that no longer returns. And when that happens, when her silence stops being sharp and simply becomes hollow, you will have lost the last person who ever truly knew you. And that fear is one you cannot speak aloud. So you bow your head, you drink your tea, and you carry the shame she never names. They fall like soft rain, petal by petal, covering the worn stone path in a layer of delicate pink. The wind moves gently through the branches, shaking more loose, each one drifting in a slow, weightless spiral. Around you, others pause to watch. Servants glance upward with quiet wonder. A child giggles somewhere behind a wall. Even your Lord, brief and unguarded, allows himself a moment of stillness beneath the tree. They all see the same thing: beauty, renewal, the brief and fragile joy of impermanence. But you feel nothing, not because you cannot, because you've trained yourself not to. The blossoms fall, and all you see is another reminder of how quickly things disappear when they are at their most vivid. They do not linger. They do not rot. They are beautiful only in their dying, and that beauty belongs to them, not to you. You've stood under this same tree before, last year, the year before that, each season marked by the same gentle spectacle. But each year, you feel further away from it, as if the tree continues its quiet cycle while you remain unchanged. Not eternal, just stuck. The petals fall fresh, bright, fragrant, but you are duller now, heavier. The first time you saw this tree in bloom, you felt something stir, an ache in your chest, a soft pull behind the eyes. You tried to write a poem about it. The brush shook in your hand. The words came slow. It was not a good poem, but it was honest. You don't try anymore. Now, you simply watch. Hands clasped behind your back, posture straight, eyes still. The petals fall, and you let them. Others say the cherry blossom is a symbol of life's fragility, of beauty in brevity, of clarity in the face of the inevitable. You've heard the monks say it reminds us to cherish each moment. You've heard nobles call it a lesson in humility. You've heard women whisper that it's romantic, but to you, it is something else entirely. It is a contrast. Their fall is soft. Yours is slow. They are watched, admired, remembered. You, if you fell today, would leave no sound, no trace. The tree would bloom again next spring. The path would be swept. Your name perhaps spoken once at the evening meal, then forgotten. No music would mark your absence. No petal would land differently. That knowledge doesn't grieve you. It just lives with you. Settled, permanent, like old dust in the folds of your robe. And still, you come back to this spot each spring, not for meaning, not for peace, just because it is there. A place where others lower their voices, where the world pauses for something soft. You stand beneath the branches and let the petals brush your shoulders, your face, your hair. You don't wipe them away. You let them rest, even as they melt against your skin. You wonder if someone sees you from a distance and thinks you are moved, thinks you are noble in your stillness, thinks you are quietly embracing the lesson of the blossom. But they would be wrong. You are not moved. You are not resisting tears. You are simply waiting. The blossoms fall. The wind blows. The child behind the wall laughs again. And you remain. Upright. Unbent. Unblooming. You knew him before all this. Before the armor. Before the ranks. Before silence became your daily language. He laughed easily back then. His voice always slightly too loud. His gait uneven from an old training injury he never tried to hide. You sparred together in the mornings, shoulder to shoulder in drills, your sweat mixing in the dirt. He helped you mend your blade once when yours chipped during a winter demonstration. You drank together during festival nights, whispered poems to each other in half-sleep, cursed the same stewards under your breath. He was never your brother, but close enough. Close enough to trust with your back. And now he kneels before you, sleeves folded, neck exposed, eyes calm. Not resigned, not angry, just still. You were given the order that morning. No explanation. Just his name on a scroll, written in black ink that had not yet dried when you were told to bow and accept. He doesn't ask why. He already knows. Or maybe he doesn't care. Maybe that's the final gift he offers you. Silence. No accusations. No pleading. Just the simple acceptance of a role neither of you chose. You kneel opposite him. Your hand rests on the hilt. Your mouth is dry. Your stomach hollow, but your posture is perfect. You bow first, because that's the order of things. He bows lower in return, not out of hierarchy, but respect. His respect for you has not changed, and that hurts more than any betrayal might have. Because this is not betrayal. He has not turned against your Lord. He has not violated the code. He is not a criminal. He is simply no longer useful, or perhaps too visible, or perhaps he said something to someone at the wrong time. You don't know. You're not allowed to know. The moment you asked, you would become visible too. So you didn't. You just nodded. And now you are here. Your hand moves without thought. The blade leaves the sheath in a clean arc, practiced 1,000 times. But this time it feels different, slower, not in speed, but in weight. The air thickens between you as the sword rises. His head remains lowered. He breathes in, holds it, and you see the muscles in his jaw tighten, not from fear, but from effort. He wants to make this easier for you. Even now. Even like this, you don't say goodbye. That would make it personal. That would be weakness. So you exhale, steady, and let the blade fall. It meets the back of his neck with a quiet sound. Not a crack, not a thud, just the final punctuation at the end of a sentence neither of you wrote. His body leans forward, folds gently, almost politely, as if apologizing for the burden. You remain kneeling, your arms still extended, your face expressionless. Later, you clean the blade. The cloth moves slowly, steadily, wiping away what little remains. You burn his poem without reading it. You bow to the ashes, and then you walk back through the hall, your footsteps soft, your presence expected. No one speaks to you. No one avoids you. This too is part of the role. Executing a friend is not an anomaly. It is a test, a confirmation that you are still able, that you are still loyal, that nothing inside you is greater than duty. You sit down for the evening meal. You chew the rice. You sip the tea. You listen to the wind through the slats. And later in the dark, you remember his voice. You remember his laugh. And for a moment, your hands tremble. Not from sorrow, from silence. Because now, you carry his memory, quietly, alone, as you were meant to. You wake with the taste of ink in your mouth, as if you had swallowed a scroll whole during the night. The dream is already fading, but its weight remains. You were drowning, slowly, not in water, but in words. Paper, parchment, bamboo slips, all pressing down against your chest. Orders without meaning, reports without purpose, letters that weren't addressed to you but somehow still needed your hand. In the dream, you clawed upward through layers of calligraphy and brushstrokes, your fingers blackened with wet characters that moved and bled beneath your touch. You called out once, not for help, just to be heard. But your voice disappeared into the ink, absorbed like water into dry wood. No one answered. The writing closed over your face, smooth and final, and you stopped fighting. Because there was nothing left to say. Even awake, the feeling doesn't leave. You rise slowly, the room around you still soaked in silence. The brush sits on your desk, the inkstone still wet from the night before. You don't remember writing anything, but the blotched pages beside it say otherwise. A list of names, a record of rations, a reprimand dictated by someone above you, signed in your own hand. You stare at your signature for a moment, trying to remember how it became so fluid, so mechanical. The characters are neat, exact, lifeless. They do not belong to you. You don't remember the last time you wrote something that wasn't assigned. Not a poem, not a thought, not a truth. Only replication. Your words have become vessels for other voices. Each syllable an echo of power not your own. You wonder, briefly, if your brush would still obey you if you tried to speak from yourself. There are scrolls everywhere, stacked, bundled, sealed in boxes. Every morning, more arrive, carried by messengers who bow and vanish. You open them, skim them, transcribe them, store them. You issue commands that you didn't write. You deliver news you didn't witness. You enforce rules you didn't shape. Each scroll is a thread in a web you can't see the edges of. They move through you, not with you. You are the conduit, not the author. And in that, something is lost. You have a voice, but you don't use it. You have thoughts, but you erase them before they surface. It is safer that way. Simpler. The ink stains your sleeves, your fingers, the edge of your sleeve where you rub your temple too often. The black never truly fades. Even when you wash your hands, it stays beneath the nails, like it belongs there. Sometimes, you imagine what it would be like to write your own name and mean it. To write a single sentence that no one asked for. Something soft. Something true. Not to be read, not to be stored, not to be judged. Just written. Just released. But the thought dies before it reaches paper. You look around the room, orderly, silent, cold, and know there's no space for that here. So you dip the brush in ink, straighten the paper, and begin again. A report, a request, a correction. The words flow easily. Your hand does not hesitate. The brush moves like it always does, loyal, obedient, smooth. By nightfall, your fingers will ache, your back will tighten, and when you sleep, the dreams will return. You'll be beneath the words again, watching them fall like ash from the ceiling, piling higher and higher. You'll try to cry out, but nothing will come. Only silence, only ink, only the weight of language that was never yours. The sound comes softly at first, just the faint scrape of wood against gravel, uneven and deliberate. Your body notices it before your mind does. Your breath shortens, your spine stiffens, your eyes lift from whatever task is in your hands. It's a sound that means interruption, a sound that means someone is approaching, and rarely does that someone come without a message. You tell yourself it could be harmless, a servant, a child, a passing monk, but deep down, you already know. The pace is too slow to be casual, too measured to be clumsy. The steps fall one after another, like drops of water in a still bowl. Not rushed, not hesitant, just inevitable. You don't move yet. You stay seated, your fingers paused mid-fold, brush suspended over ink, hand frozen above cloth. Because maybe, just maybe, if you don't acknowledge it, the footsteps will pass by. Maybe they're not coming for you. Maybe. But they always sound like they are. Every echo, every dry crunch underfoot carries the weight of possibility. You've heard those clogs before, on other mornings, approaching other doors. You remember how the paper screens slid open, how names were spoken, how silence followed. You remember how some never came back from those summons. Some returned bowed lower, shoulders heavier, mouths shut for days, and some didn't return at all. You learned to read the sound of footsteps like reading a letter, by weight, by rhythm, by hesitation. A rushed step might mean panic, a calm one, decision. When you hear clogs now, you try to count the time between each tap. You try to guess the mood of the person who wears them. You listen for the stop. That's the worst part. When the sound ends just outside your wall. When there's no more gravel, no more breath, only stillness. And then the knock, always soft, always final. You open the screen slowly, trying to keep your expression flat. The messenger is already bowing. Sometimes it's a steward, sometimes a junior retainer, sometimes a stranger, face unreadable, eyes already looking past you. They offer a scroll or a few words, rarely both. The language is always formal, not out of respect, but distance. By order, it has been decided. You are summoned. You bow in return. You take the message. You close the screen. Your hands shake later, not during. The paper feels too light. The ink too sharp. It could be anything, a reprimand, an order, a death. It might mean leaving tonight, or reporting to someone you've never spoken to, or being told to do something you cannot refuse and will not forget. You do not read the message right away. You place it beside you and stare at it as if by waiting, you could weaken its meaning. But nothing ever fades in this place, not even words. You try not to hate the sound. You tell yourself it's part of the life you chose, part of the rank you earned, part of the order that keeps everything in place. But you flinch every time you hear it, even when it's not meant for you, even when it stops at a different door, because it reminds you how little is ever truly yours. Not your time, not your path, not even the peace of a quiet morning. All of it can be broken by footsteps and gravel and the soft knock that follows. And you fear, more than anything, the day it will come again. That same sound, that same pace, that same stillness outside your wall. And this time, the message won't be for something you can carry out and forget. This time, it will say your name in a way that means ending. And when that day comes, you will bow, you will nod, you will follow. Because that too is what the sound means. Not just that someone is coming, but that you have no place to hide. You lower yourself to the floor with care, one knee at a time, robe pulled smooth, spine held straight. This is sitting, but only in appearance. Your body does not relax. Your muscles do not soften. Your breathing remains shallow, controlled. The pose is precise, knees tucked, hands resting on thighs, head bowed just enough to show readiness. You are not at ease. You are poised, balanced on a threshold between movement and stillness. This is not a place of rest. It is a posture of waiting. Every joint, every tendon remembers that at any moment, someone may enter. Someone may call your name and you must rise without hesitation. There is no slouching, no leaning, no folding into yourself. To do so would be shameful, lazy, dangerous. You don't remember the last time you truly let your body go limp. Even in sleep, your limbs stay orderly, your head never quite sinking into the pillow. The floor beneath you offers no comfort. Tatami woven tight, flattened over time, presses into your shins. At first, you would shift your weight discreetly, hoping to ease the numbness. Now, you no longer try. The pain fades eventually, replaced by dull pressure. Your toes curl, your ankles twist slightly, but you remain motionless above the discomfort. You learned long ago that pain passes quicker when you don't acknowledge it, and so you wait. You listen for footsteps, for your name, for the rustle of fabric that signals movement in the room. Even when alone, you sit like this, not from fear of being seen, but from the inability to forget you might be. The habit is too deep, the discipline too permanent. There's no longer a line between performance and reflex. You sit like a statue carved for a role that requires silence, attentiveness, control. When others enter the room, they glance at you but do not speak. Your position tells them everything they need to know. You are alert. You are present. You are obedient. Conversation flows around you, above you, never through you unless summoned. You bow when appropriate, nod when necessary, and return to stillness when dismissed. It is all part of the rhythm, no motion without meaning, no comfort without permission. There are moments when the stillness stretches too long, when the legs grow numb, the back burns, the neck tightens, and still you do not shift. You imagine how it would feel to lean back, to let your spine curve, to close your eyes and exhale fully. But imagination brings no relief, only more awareness of what must not be done. And so you breathe in short, quiet measures. You anchor yourself in posture, and you endure the absence of rest. When the moment ends, when the meeting is over, the guest has left, the instruction has been delivered. You rise with the same care you lowered yourself. Slowly, without groaning, without swaying. Your knees creak, but do not protest aloud. You press your hand to the floor for balance, but not to push off. You stand not because you are rested, but because you are needed elsewhere. And in that motion, you carry with you the truth you've always known. Sitting is not a reprieve. It is a holding pattern, a waiting room for obedience. You never truly sit down, not in your room, not in the courtyard, not beside your son or across from your wife. You perform rest, the way you perform silence, the way you perform loyalty. And in doing so, your body forgets what real ease ever felt like. It becomes another part of the mask, another shape of endurance, another posture mistaken for peace. Your armor hangs heavy on your shoulders, polished and precise, the cords tied exactly as tradition demands. From a distance, you look like a warrior, a figure of authority, someone trained to strike, to defend, to lead. But the sword at your side rarely leaves its sheath. Not because there is peace, but because your battles are quiet. You carry scrolls, not severed heads. You deliver messages, not death. Each day begins not with combat drills, but with errands. Tea prepared at the correct temperature, robes arranged for inspection, lanterns lit in the hallway before dusk. You bow, you wait, you fetch. When your lord gestures, you rise. When he speaks, you kneel. You are not asked for your opinion. You are not expected to think. You wear the symbols of power, but live beneath them, bent at the waist. Each piece of steel across your body is ceremonial, a costume to remind others of a title that no longer fits. You once believed the sword would change you, that it would carve something noble into your posture, that it would make your name heavier. You studied with seriousness, with hunger. You trained until your hands bled, until your breath broke in your throat. And yet now, most of your days pass in silence, kneeling by doorways, standing beside thresholds, attending meetings where your presence is required only as ornament. You hand out inkstones, accept gifts, bow during introductions. You pour sake without spilling a drop. Your fingers have memorized the weight of ceramic cups more intimately than the hilt of your blade. When others look at you, they see a soldier, a man of discipline, a protector. But you know the truth. You serve, quietly, invisibly, endlessly. There is no battlefield, no glory, just the steady erosion of self beneath the demands of someone else's name. The papers are constant. Records of rice, notices of birth, disputes over land, letters requesting favors. You carry them across courtyards, up staircases, into rooms where you are never invited to sit. You bow as you hand them over. Listen for a reply you are not meant to hear, and leave before the conversation begins. Some are sealed with wax, some with twine, some with nothing at all. You do not open them, but you carry their weight as if they were swords. You begin to feel the same dull ache in your arms that once came from training, but now it's from holding trays and scrolls and ceremonial items. Your strength no longer serves combat. It serves stillness, balance, politeness, and when others praise your composure, your grace, your reliability, you bow again and accept their words as if they mean pride. But inside there is only repetition, and the quiet understanding that your usefulness depends on being seen but not heard. At night, when the day's tasks have settled, you remove your armor piece by piece. Each segment comes off with a soft sigh of release. You line it up with care, cleaning dust from the lacquered surface, brushing lint from the cords. Not because you love it, but because it is your mask. You need it to be perfect. Without it, you are too easy to mistake for a servant. With it, they hesitate for a moment longer, just enough to give you space. But even then, the illusion cracks. You see the way they hand you things without looking, the way they call you not by name but by function. Bring this. Go there. He will wait. And you do. You go, you wait, you nod, you hold the tray. You hold the silence. You hold the weight of being more armor than man, more presence than person, more servant than warrior. And no one ever questions it, least of all you. Because that, too, is part of the role. At first, it was a choice. You heard something amusing, a misstep in speech, a crooked bow, a servant muttering under his breath, and you smiled, but kept it inside. You reminded yourself that laughter is casual, undisciplined, open. It loosens the body, softens the face, disrupts the form. So you swallowed it. Not out of shame, but out of duty. The people around you weren't laughing. Your lord certainly wasn't. Even among your peers, humor was reserved for whispers in the dark, half-sentences cut short when a door creaked. You thought, at the time, that it was a small sacrifice, a tightening of the self, necessary, controlled. You would save your laughter for later, for when the hall was empty, for when the robes came off, for when no eyes were watching. But the laughter never came. The moment passed, and you didn't notice its absence. It faded like warmth after a fire, slowly, gently, completely. You stopped finding things funny, not because they weren't, but because the part of you that used to respond had grown still. You heard stories that would have once drawn a chuckle. You saw a drunk guard stumble into a lantern and land flat on his back. You listened to a child mispronounce your title in the market. You felt the flicker of amusement somewhere deep in the chest, but it never rose. It stayed trapped, like steam beneath cold stone. Your mouth stayed closed, your eyes steady. Over time, even that flicker disappeared. The world became flat. Not sad, not cruel, just muted. Things happened. People spoke. The days turned. But you moved through them without reaction, like water through reeds. And when someone laughed near you, truly laughed, with shoulders shaking and face red, it startled you. It sounded too loud, too alive. Sometimes you try to remember what your own laughter used to sound like. You picture moments, years ago, in the early mornings with other trainees, sitting cross-legged on the stones, joking about whose sword had the dullest edge, or long nights during festival days, cheeks warm from sake, shouting nonsense into the dark sky. You try to summon the sound, the breath, the movement, but your memory gives you only silence. The image plays in your mind, but no voice comes with it. You can no longer mimic it. Your body has forgotten the shape. Your face has forgotten how to form the rhythm. It's as if you were never built for laughter to begin with. As if someone else wore your name, your face, your skin, back when that sound was possible. You wonder if others notice, if they remember a time when your mouth moved differently, when your eyes lit at the edge. But no one says anything. Silence has become so expected that no one questions its weight. And yet, somewhere in the quiet, you feel its absence. Not as pain, but as distance, like something left behind on a journey you didn't realize you were taking. You don't miss it in the way people miss comfort or warmth. You miss it the way one misses a name they no longer use. It is gone, and in its place is a stillness that cannot be broken. You sit among others, hear them laugh politely, always politely, and you nod, smile faintly, tilt your head at the right moments. You perform amusement without the feeling, and you do it well. So well that they stop expecting more, and you forget what it was to be moved by something light, to feel levity rise unbidden. You have not rejected laughter. You have simply lost the path back to it. And perhaps in this life that is the truest sign of loyalty, not what you give, but what you never ask to return. There is a small stone at the edge of the compound, just beneath the slope where the moss grows thick and the lanterns seldom reach. The ground there is hard but dry, the kind of earth that can be dug in a single evening without water pooling or roots resisting. It's not hidden, it's not honored, it simply exists, just past the final step of the corridor, beyond the wall, in the space reserved for those who are already forgotten. Your name is carved there, not deeply, not with reverence, just enough to be legible when the time comes. The date has not been filled. The space waits, like the earth beneath it. You walk past it often, on the way to training, on the way to deliver scrolls, on the way to serve tea you did not brew. No one ever comments on it. No one needs to. Everyone of your rank has one. You saw it the first time after a long day of drills. You had dirt on your knees, blood on your palm, and silence in your chest. Your instructor led you there not with ceremony, but with a nod. "Here," he said. That was all. You didn't ask questions. You didn't pretend to be surprised. The others had theirs. It was natural you would have one too. You looked at the stone, ran your fingers across the grooves, and nodded in return. Not as acceptance, as recognition. A quiet agreement that your place was prepared. Since then, the stone has aged. Moss clings to the edges. The corners have softened. The characters, though, remain clear, as if someone returns to keep them that way. Perhaps they do. Perhaps they want to ensure you remember that the end is not far, that it waits just a few steps beyond the morning path. Some days, it feels closer than others. You catch yourself glancing at it without meaning to. Not with fear, not even with sadness, just with familiarity, like checking the time. You begin to think of it less as a grave and more as a destination, a marker in a life already measured. You know who dug it. You know when the order was given. You know, vaguely, what rites will follow. Not grand, not poetic. A few words, a few bows, a new name added to the list. nothing you haven't seen before, nothing you wouldn't be asked to do for someone else. And yet, there's something strange in knowing it's already there. Finality without timing, an ending without narrative, no battle, no story, just a stone with a space, and a man who walks past it, day after day, still breathing, still waiting. Sometimes you imagine someone finding it after all this has passed. A traveler, maybe, a scholar, someone brushing aside the moss, reading the name aloud, wondering who you were. You know it's unlikely. The grave is not grand enough for questions, and your life, though filled with formality, holds little that would endure in memory. You are not a hero, not a villain. You've done your duty. You've kept your silence. You've bowed when told and struck when ordered. If there is a legacy, it is in the unremarkable steadiness of your presence. And perhaps that, too, is a kind of death. One that happens long before the body falls. You leave no words behind, no children who bear your teachings, no stories that begin with your name, just a path, a stone, and a date that has not yet come, but soon, always soon. In a quiet courtyard behind the main hall, where the stones are swept each morning and the trees are trimmed into careful silence, you kneel. The position is precise. Your knees rest on the tatami just so. Your spine is straight. Your hands lie in your lap, one over the other, calm, composed, as if this were a meditation. No one speaks. There is no need. You already know the steps. The ritual has been practiced too many times to require instruction. Before you lies the wooden blade, not sharp, not dangerous, not real. But its weight in your hands is not imaginary. You feel it in your wrists, in your shoulders, in the base of your spine. You bow, slowly, and then you begin. The motion is clean. The hands move together. The wooden knife presses against the cloth of your robe, sliding across the belly, then pausing, then turning, then moving again. A shallow curve. A breath held, a breath released. Then again, and again. The body learns the motion before the mind does. At first, it was clumsy. You worried about angles, about timing, about the face you should wear while pretending to die. But now it flows. You no longer think about where your hands are. They already know. The ceremony is not about pretending. It is about readiness, about shaping the self into someone who will not tremble when the day comes. You do not look away. You do not blink. You watch your hands make the cut as if watching a stranger's death. And in time, you begin to believe it's already happened. Others watch you. They stand in the shade of the corridor, arms crossed or at their sides, silent. They nod at your form, correct your posture with a gesture, comment sometimes on your composure. He understands, someone once said. You did not ask what that meant. You didn't need to. You felt it in your chest, that quiet detachment, that loosening from fear. Seppuku is not an act of desperation. It is not escape. It is duty, carried to its final line. It is a performance, but not for applause. You rehearse it like a monk rehearses stillness, like a craftsman sharpens a blade he hopes never to use. But you do hope to use it, not because you long for death, but because in a life where so little is yours, the choice of how to leave it is the only thing that belongs to you. And so you practice, day after day, sometimes alone, sometimes before an audience. You fold the cloth. You unsheathe the mock blade. You press it against your stomach and imagine the resistance, the warmth, the rush of silence that follows. You do not wince. You do not flinch. The idea becomes familiar, not comforting, not terrifying, just present. Like hunger, like cold. A companion that does not leave. You begin to see it not as the end of your life, but as the shape of it. Everything narrows to that moment, that breath, that cut. Each bow you make, each word you do not say, each night you spend on the floor, it's all practice. Not for dying, but for control. For the right to choose the moment when everything falls still. And in that stillness, perhaps, is freedom. Not the kind others speak of, not joy, not peace, but release from the constant rehearsing, from the waiting, from the walking past your own grave, from the rituals that teach you how to vanish with grace. You stand when dismissed. You bow. You leave the courtyard in silence. The blade is returned to its place. The audience disperses, and the world continues, unaware that you've just died again, quietly, properly, as you will, one day, for real. There are moments, rare and quiet, when no one is looking, no one is speaking, and you are not required to bow or hold a tray or kneel before another man's presence. In those moments, you sometimes ask yourself a question that doesn't have a place in this world. Were you ever a person? Not a title, not a rank, not a role carved by your Lord's will. Just a person. Someone with thoughts that weren't shaped by duty, with hands that moved not to serve but to feel, with a voice that didn't wait for permission. It's a strange thought, almost treasonous. But it doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from absence, the absence of memory, of origin, of self. You do not remember when you stopped being you. You only know that, somewhere along the years of kneeling and striking and waiting and serving, that center quietly disappeared. You try to remember your first laugh, your first secret, your first dream. Not the one about rising in rank or earning favor or dying with honor. The real one. The one that had nothing to do with swords or silence. But your mind returns nothing. It's as if someone erased the child who once held this body and replaced him with posture, with ceremony, with cold eyes and folded hands. You remember learning how to walk with measured steps, how to speak with calculated weight, how to show humility without feeling it. You remember being praised for stillness, corrected for joy, punished for curiosity. You remember the first time someone called you useful, and how proud that made you, as if usefulness was the goal, as if usefulness was identity. And maybe it is, because now that's all that's left. A body that functions, a mind that obeys, a voice that waits, and a name that doesn't belong to anything inside. Sometimes you catch your reflection in a bowl of water or the polished edge of your blade, and for a breath, you don't recognize it. Not with fear, just with distance. The face is familiar, but hollow. Like a mask that's been worn too long. The eyes don't search. The mouth doesn't move. You wonder how others see you, if they too see only the armor, the robe, the movement of duty, if anyone remembers who you were before all this began. Or if no one ever knew. Perhaps you never had a self to begin with. Perhaps you were shaped, not erased. Born for this, sculpted by expectation, pressed into form by hands unseen. And yet, even that thought feels too personal, too poetic. The truth is simpler. You are what was needed, and that need left no room for personhood. And still, the question remains, not every day, but some days, in the space between rituals, in the silence after a long bow, you feel it rise like smoke from a fire that never truly burned. Who were you? And more haunting, were you ever? There is no answer. There never was. Only the weight of repetition, the discipline of vanishing. You sleep beside your sword. You wake before the sun. You write poems no one reads. You serve tea with hands that no longer tremble. And when the time comes, you will bow, and you will kneel, and you will cut, exactly as you've practiced. Because even if you were never a person, you have always been a samurai, and that, perhaps, is the only name that matters. There is no command, no voice calling you to attention, no formal setting, no polished floor, just an empty corridor or the edge of the courtyard, or a quiet place between obligations. And yet you bow, not deeply, not with ceremony, just enough to feel the stretch in your back, the slow release in your neck, the memory of every time you've done this before. It doesn't matter who is watching. It doesn't matter if anyone is. The act is no longer about recognition. It is no longer about showing respect, or proving allegiance, or honoring form. It is something else now. A habit. A gesture that has replaced breath. You bow because you always have. Because your body doesn't know what else to do when still. Because to stop might mean remembering why you began. There was a time when bows held weight, when each angle had a meaning, when the depth of the bend showed intention, and intention revealed character. That time has long since passed. You've bowed to lords you feared, to men you despised, to ghosts in the temple, to blood on the floor. You've bowed in triumph, though it felt like defeat. You've bowed in apology, though you did nothing wrong. You've bowed when dismissed, when greeted, when no words were needed. And slowly, the meaning unraveled. What remains is motion, precision. The knowledge that the world can take everything from you, your name, your desires, your voice. But if your body can still perform this one controlled act, then something of you remains. Not dignity, not defiance, just movement, just proof that the machinery still turns. The others don't notice anymore. They bow too, but theirs are sharp, quick, functional. You see it in their eyes. They've turned the ritual into a task, something to be performed and forgotten. But for you, the bow is the only place where silence feels honest. Not forced, not taught, just present. In the low curve of your spine, in the stillness of your breath, you find something close to being. Not understanding, not peace, but being. Existing in a moment where nothing is required of you but to lower yourself and rise again. No questions, no commands, no failures, just gravity and choice. And even choice is questionable. Perhaps it's not a choice anymore. Perhaps it's simply what's left. When all else is worn down, stripped away, buried under years of obedience, this gesture remains. And so still, you bow. Not because it means anything, not because it saves you, but because you can. While your knees still bend, while your back still holds, while your breath still comes steady enough to carry the movement, you bow to no one, or to everyone, to the stone with your name, to the emptiness of your room, to the shape of the past you can no longer touch. And maybe, just maybe, in that motion, useless, unseen, unpraised, there is a kind of defiance, or mercy, or memory, or simply the last part of you that hasn't gone silent. You rise again, not taller, not stronger, but steady. And for now, that is enough. Thank you for staying through the silence, the wait, and the small, steady endurance. Perhaps you felt a little of what it meant to survive, not as a hero, but simply as someone who stayed. Sleep well. You're not alone.